Hey, everybody, welcome into the Southeastern 14, where we're doing betting previews for every SEC football game this season. And today we're talking about a week 2 matchup between the Texas Longhorns and the Arkansas Razorbacks. This is one of the most anticipated games on the slate this week, and it's got a 7 p.m. Eastern kickoff time at Razorback Stadium in Fayetteville. It's going to be on ESPN as a primetime game. Texas opened as a 6-point favorite in this game, and the lines moved to 7. The over-under has actually moved the other direction. It opened at 58.5 and it's down to 56.5. I've got our betting expert, Christopher Smith, here with me. Christopher, what are your early takeaways on this game?
Yeah, Nick, good to see you. I think that both of these teams have great coaching staffs. Steve Sarkisian, of course, in his first year at Texas. And Sam Pittman, I think he has probably two of the best coordinators that of any team in college football. Both of these teams very strong on the coordinator side too. So I'm really interested to see. I guess this will be a more common matchup with Texas moving into the SEC later. So we'll see if there's any bad blood or interesting stuff that develops out of that. But Nick, why don't you take us into Nick's news and notes and tell us what's going on around these two programs heading into the big game on Saturday?
Yeah, sure. So first, let's talk about weather and injuries, right? We've got a high of 85 in Fayetteville on Saturday, a low of 63. So that evening kickoff should fall somewhere comfortably in between. Not much chance of rain and little wind. So we should have a clean track for a Saturday night game. And then on the injury side, I think the thing that everybody was worried about going into the season was Arkansas star wide receiver Treylon Burks. But he he had dealt with an injury all camp, but he sort of put that to rest in week 1 when he made an appearance against Rice in the Razorbacks opening week win. So some other things to consider about this game. First, you kind of mentioned it, but this is it's a future SEC matchup that we're all looking forward to, but it's also a game between two old hated rivals in the Southwest Conference. These teams have actually played 78 times. So there's nothing new here, and there's no love lost between Arkansas and Texas. That makes it especially spicy for those who are watching from a non-betting perspective, just as a casual observer. They haven't played since 2014 when Arkansas won 31-7. But obviously things have changed a lot for both of these programs since that last game. Texas leads the all-time series 56-22. So really this is a game that typically, historically, the Longhorns find a way to win. Let's talk about week 1 for both of these teams. Arkansas won their game against Rice, but it was not as easy as the score indicated. Actually, the Razorbacks scored 24 unanswered points to come back and win their game and covered the 19.5-point spread against Rice. I think we, as bettors, spent most of that game wondering, when that Rice ticket was going to cash. But as it turned out, the Razorbacks scored 24 unanswered, three fourth quarter touchdowns, and cashed for their bettors. And then on the other side of this, Texas actually had a top 25 opponent come to their home field in week 1, Louisiana, Billy Napier's team. And there were some questions what Steve Sarkisian's team would look like in his debut. And I think he answered most of them with a 38-18 win in an easy cover situation from a betting perspective. Christopher, what do you take away from week 1 for both of those teams and sort of put it into a betting lens for week 2?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting to watch Texas in the first game under Steve Sarkisian. It's not like we haven't seen him as a head coach before, of course, in the Pac-12, but we always thought Texas was pretty loaded from a talent perspective. And I think, at least among people that I respect in the betting community, the narrative around Tom Herman was always that he mismanaged this program way more than people really understood. And part of that was whenever his team was a favorite, he would run his players just absolutely ragged in practice before games to an extreme extent. And as a result, his teams were always tired and injured and kind of very thin because of that. And I think you saw that in the narrative from a betting standpoint, that Herman's teams often cashed as underdogs and then failed to cover the spread as favorites. And now, of course, Texas, as you mentioned, is a 7-point favorite here against Arkansas. So it'll be interesting to see, but it doesn't seem like Sarkisian's making the same mistakes in terms of how he's managing the program overall. Now, you look at Arkansas, and one of the reasons they were able to surprise a lot of people last season in Sam Pittman's first year was the defense of former Missouri head coach Barry Odom. And don't get me wrong, Arkansas has some good pieces on defense. The individual players, they've got 2 or 3 guys who may get a look at the NFL, and they're not bad. But really, what Arkansas did on defense last year is they were a classic bend but don't break. And keep everything in front of you. Don't let you get big plays, make you work methodically down the field and execute, make you be patient. And you look at what they did, you look at what Steve Sarkisian did at Alabama last year against this same defense. And of course, Alabama may have had the best offense in college football, or arguably at least one of the best last year, extremely explosive. And Mac Jones was 24 of 29 in that matchup against Arkansas last year, but only 1 completion of more than 17 yards. And that for that Alabama team last year, that's very significant. But what Sark did was he was completely fine dinking and dunking down the field against this defense. Alabama had 7 different drives of at least 7 plays in that game, and they had touchdown drives of 13 and 14 plays, which for that Alabama offense that's a lot of plays. They usually score a lot faster than that. And you look at Bijan Robinson, which is Texas's running back this year, probably more talented than any running back Alabama even has on their roster this year, at least. And you look at Hudson Card, 24 career passes total. Last week was really his first introduction into college football. He's Texas's starting quarterback. KJ Jefferson, only 93 career passes for Arkansas. Both of those guys are super green, and I would expect the coaches will kind of handle them with kitty gloves and be very careful about preventing mistakes. So you may see some more conservative play calling on offense. And I expect Sark to carry over that same game plan this year at Texas as he used at Alabama last year, which means not so much explosive plays and being patient and taking what Arkansas's defense gives him, probably putting together some long clock bleeding drives. So that's some of the analysis I have. But Nick, why don't you lead us off with the picks? Looks like you went 14, 9-1 last week. I went 13, 10-1. So you got me to 1 game. Let's see if I can catch up here, or are you going to grow your gap on me?
Well, hopefully I grow the gap. I'm not sure it's going to happen on this game. I think we see it pretty similarly, honestly. I listen to that analysis about Sarkisian and the talent that he's able to execute with at Texas. I have a hard time picking against them, even on the road. So I'll lay the 7 points here and take the Longhorns in this game. And then leaning on what you talked about with the inexperience of the quarterbacks on both sides of this game, I feel like the under 56.5 is a smart play as well, just because we're going to, like you said, we're going to see these coaches probably pick and choose their spots. And to me, that's a lot of longer drives, a lot of running the ball. And ultimately, I don't know that we get over 8 touchdowns.
Yeah. And you look at Arkansas's top receiver, maybe one of the 2 or 3 best receivers, at least in the SEC. He did end up playing last week, but he was not 100%, it seemed like. And KJ Jefferson, very good with his legs, but I mentioned this last week. I do think Arkansas is going to miss Felipe Franks to an extent in the passing game this year. So maybe he can get off some nice runs, but I don't expect consistency or accuracy in the Arkansas passing game, at least right now, until Treylon Burks is 100% healthy. I don't know that they have an extreme threat there. So I do think I'm going to take Texas -7 in this game. If it gets above 7, 7 is a very key number, then I would have at least some pause, but I do like Texas, especially at -7 or less. And I'm very much in love with under 56.5. Anything over 56, I'm definitely be betting that with my own money. So we'll see how it turns out. But for Nick Cole, I'm Christopher Smith with SEC 14. We'll be breaking down all the SEC games from a betting standpoint. So make sure you tune in and subscribe to this channel to catch all of our analysis all season long.